On the morning he planned to start his new life, the people he trusted most set a trap so cruel it could have destroyed him forever. Michael grew up in Benton town, a narrow street of mango trees, dusty ball games, and neighbors who knew your grandmother's name. His father, Patrick, and his mother, Ruth, loved applause more than truth. They called his younger brother Emmanuel, the star, the promise, the golden one. Michael was the quiet son who fixed the leaking tap, fetched the medicine from Unity Hospital, and carried the blame no one wanted. When Emmanuel sneezed, the house brought ginger tea. When Michael won a school prize, someone changed the subject. He learned early that in some homes, love is a stage, and the loudest child keeps the microphone. Still, he worked, he waited, and he hoped that one day effort would speak louder than favoritism. That hope carried him further than anyone guessed. Years later, the boy who once ate last began to dream first. Where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more. Michael studied under a flickering bulb and prayed with a stubborn heart. He became the student who sat in front, the helper who taught others after class. When he brought home a report card full of A's, Ruth said, "That's fine," and pinned Emmanuel's crooked crayon lion to the fridge. On his 13th birthday, a cheap plastic whistle sat on Michael's plate while Emmanuel cut the biggest cake slice for energy. Michael did not fight. He stored the sting like a seed. By 2010 he saw one way out: learning. He read borrowed books, solved past papers from Citibank scholarship tests, and walked to the library in harmattan dust. He promised himself quietly, "If no one claps for me, I will still finish the race." The letter arrived on a Tuesday that smelled of rain. Horizon University in Kitaro City offered Michael an accelerated finance program. 2 intense years, world-class lecturers, internships at Citibank, if he could keep his grades high. Benton State College, the local option Patrick loved, would take 4 long years and hand him back to the same small circle. Horizon promised the wider world. The scholarship covered 80% of tuition. Michael could bridge the rest with part-time work and the $250 a month Patrick had sworn to invest in his local education. But Patrick's pride spoke first. "You will not leave this state and make your brother jealous. Go to Benton State College and stay home." Michael did not raise his voice. He made a condition that sounded obedient. "If I must attend locally, let me stay in the dorms. I need quiet to focus." Patrick grinned, thinking he had won. That night, Michael booked a one-way seat to Kitaro City. Kitaro City cracked open like sunrise. Michael shared a small hostel room near Horizon University, not a dorm at Benton State College. He worked evenings at a copy shop, stacked textbooks by the kettle, and learned to nap on buses between classes and his internship. He kept receipts, saved $40 here, $18 there, and sent polite messages home. "Classes are fine. Dorm is noisy. Pray for me." Emmanuel posted fresh sneakers on social media and called himself self-made. Michael posted nothing. By the end of his first year, Citibank stamped his internship report, outstanding. By the end of his second, Horizon shook his hand at graduation. Early, exact, unannounced. A letter from Sunwave Holdings followed with a contract worth $120,000 a year and a mentor who said, "Your silence is strength. Keep building." Michael rented a modest flat, sent $200 now and then for the house, and let his parents believe he was still nearby, obedient and ordinary. 3 seasons later, the call came with drums in the background. Patrick's voice carried pride and command. "Your brother Emmanuel will marry in Bright Coast Hall. You must arrive 10 days early, Michael. Help with the bills. Bring your suit. Do not shame us." Michael stood by his window and watched a hawk trace circles over Benton Road in his mind. He heard the old script waiting. Family first, image first, Michael last. An hour later came the threat dressed as tradition. "If you refuse," Patrick said, "we will cut your tuition. No more dollars for your schooling." Michael swallowed a laugh. School had ended a full year before. His salary was already larger than Patrick's proud whispers. But a wise traveler does not throw stones from a glass house. He said only, "Father, I will think about it," and ended the call. In the silence that followed, his heartbeat steadied like a drum before a dance. He knew a reckoning was coming. Michael did not rush his decision. He walked through Benton town's memories in his mind, the nights he lay awake listening to Ruth praise Emmanuel's potential, the afternoons he was told to run errands while Emmanuel played video games, the birthdays where his slice of cake was half the size of his brother's. This wedding was not about joy. It was about power. Patrick wanted him there as the quiet helper, the wallet that never complains. But Michael had learned something in Kitaro City. When people show you where they place you, believe them. He decided to go, but not empty-handed and not unprepared. This time, he would arrive as a man who could stand on his own feet. On the morning of his travel, Michael packed a sharp navy blue suit, polished black shoes, and a leather folder with documents no one in Benton town had seen. His contract with Sunwave Holdings, his graduation certificate from Horizon University, proof of the apartment he owned outright. He booked a flight instead of the long bus ride, arriving in the town like someone who valued his own time. At the airport, Emmanuel greeted him with a grin too wide to be sincere. "Big brother, you made it. We've been waiting," he said, already pulling Michael's suitcase toward a waiting taxi. Michael smiled lightly. "Yes, I'm here. Let's make it a memorable week." By the second day, the pressure began. Ruth came into Michael's guest room holding a handwritten list. "We need $3,000 more for the wedding hall balance," she said. "And Emmanuel needs a custom suit. You know how important image is." Michael read the list without changing expression. "Mother," he replied softly, "I have my own commitments. I will contribute what I can, but I am not your bank." Ruth's face tightened, the warmth dropping away. "After all we've done for you." Michael nodded politely and returned to reviewing his laptop. He did not raise his voice, and that quiet refusal unsettled her more than any argument. Patrick tried next, knocking on Michael's door late that night. "Your brother looks up to you," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "If you don't give generously, people will talk." Michael turned off his desk lamp and faced his father fully. "Father, people always talk. They talked when I studied instead of going to parties. They talked when I moved to Kitaro City. They talked when I worked instead of depending on you. Let them talk." Patrick's mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time, Michael saw in his father's eyes a flicker of recognition, the awareness that his quiet son was no longer someone to push around. The wedding day arrived under a bright harmattan sky. Guests in colorful lace and agbada filled Bright Coast Hall, laughter spilling into the courtyard. Emmanuel beamed in his cream suit, greeting politicians and business owners as if he were one of them. Ruth played the perfect hostess, accepting compliments on her fine sons. When it was Michael's turn to speak, he walked to the microphone with slow, deliberate steps. "Family," he began, "is not only blood. Family is who stands with you when no one is watching." He paused, scanning the room. "Today, I am proud to stand here, not because of titles or appearances, but because I have learned that a man's worth is measured in his actions, not in the applause he receives." The hall went silent. Ruth's smile froze. Patrick shifted uncomfortably. Emmanuel looked away. And Michael knew they understood exactly what he meant. After his speech, the applause came slowly, like people unsure if clapping would get them in trouble. Michael stepped down from the stage and took his seat, unbothered. He had not come for approval. He had come to set boundaries in a language his family understood. Presence without submission. Emmanuel's best man glanced at Michael with a mix of curiosity and respect. Ruth, however, leaned over to Patrick and whispered sharply, "We must talk to him tonight." Patrick nodded, his eyes still fixed on his quiet son, perhaps realizing for the first time. That night, after the last guest had left and Bright Coast Hall was empty, Michael sat on the balcony of the family house. The harmattan wind carried the distant sound of drums from another celebration down the street. Ruth approached with a tray of tea, the same gesture she had once reserved for Emmanuel alone. "Michael," she began softly, "I know we have not always understood each other." Her voice trembled slightly. "But you could help your brother. People look up to you now." Michael sipped the tea, its warmth cutting through the dry night air. "Mother, helping is not the same as carrying. Emmanuel must walk his own road." Patrick joined them, his steps slow. "You have done well for yourself," he admitted, sitting opposite Michael. "But don't forget where you came from." Michael met his father's eyes. "I haven't forgotten. I remember every time I was told to step aside so Emmanuel could shine. I remember when my achievements were ignored, when my efforts were invisible. I remember all of it, and that is why I will not go back to living as if I don't exist." Patrick's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. The silence between them was heavy, but it was not hostile. It was the silence of a truth finally spoken. Over the next few days, Michael kept to himself, attending wedding events without being drawn into unnecessary drama. Guests whispered about the quiet but successful elder brother who had come from the city. Some approached him directly, curious about his work. Michael shared just enough to inspire, never to boast. Emmanuel, meanwhile, began to notice the shift in attention. For the first time, he was not the only focus in the room. His jokes drew fewer laughs, his stories fewer nods. A shadow of insecurity crept into his smile. On the 5th day, Emmanuel confronted Michael in the kitchen. "You think you're better than me now?" he demanded, slamming a cupboard door. Michael calmly sliced a piece of yam for breakfast. "No," he said, "I think I'm better than I used to be. And you could be too, if you stop expecting everyone to make life easy for you." Emmanuel's face flushed. "You always wanted to embarrass me." Michael shook his head. "No, Emmanuel. I wanted to show you that you can stand without leaning on others. But you saw that as an insult instead of a lesson." That evening, a distant cousin named Grace came to visit. She had heard stories about Michael's success and wanted advice on applying for scholarships. Sitting in the front yard under a guava tree, Michael guided her through the application process, showing her how to write essays that told her story honestly. Ruth passed by and overheard their conversation. Something in her eyes shifted, perhaps pride, perhaps regret. For years, she had praised the wrong son for the wrong reasons, and now the quiet one was lifting others without asking for anything in return. The following day, Michael received an unexpected call from his mentor at Sunwave Holdings. "Michael," the voice said warmly, "we're opening a new branch in Benton town. I want you to lead the setup. 6 months here, then back to Kitaro City." Michael's mind raced. This was not just a career opportunity. It was a chance to redefine his place in the very town that had underestimated him. "I'll take it," he replied without hesitation. When he told his family about the new role, their reactions were mixed. Patrick's pride was evident, though he tried to hide it behind a stern nod. Ruth managed a small smile. Emmanuel forced enthusiasm, but his eyes betrayed worry. If Michael returned to Benton town as a leader in a prestigious company, the old hierarchy would shatter. Michael, however, had no interest in competing. He simply wanted to live in truth, respected, not tolerated. The weeks that followed were a quiet storm. Michael began preparing for his return, arranging housing and assembling a small team. He visited community centers, spoke with young people about career paths, and offered mentorship to those eager to learn. Word spread quickly. Michael, the once overlooked son, was coming home to build. Benton town buzzed with anticipation. On the day he officially assumed his role, Sunwave Holdings hosted a small ceremony in Benton town's Central Hall. The mayor gave a speech, community leaders shook Michael's hand, and photographs flashed. Patrick and Ruth sat in the front row, watching as their quiet son was celebrated publicly. For the first time in decades, there was no doubt about his place. Not in the family, not in the town, not in his own mind. And in that moment, Michael realized that his greatest victory was not proving them wrong. It was proving himself right. As weeks turned into months, Michael's presence in Benton town began to reshape the community. He launched a youth internship program at Sunwave Holdings, pairing young people with experienced mentors in finance, engineering, and design. Parents spoke of him with admiration, students quoted his advice, and local newspapers ran features calling him Benton town's rising sun. Emmanuel, however, watched all of this with growing unease. For years, he had been the center of every conversation. Now, his name rarely came up unless people compared him to his older brother, and the comparisons were not flattering. Ruth tried to bridge the gap between her sons, inviting them both to dinner one evening. Michael accepted politely, arriving with a bottle of fine wine. Emmanuel arrived late, his mood already sour. Throughout the meal, Ruth praised Michael's community work while Emmanuel stared at his plate. At one point he interrupted sharply. "Not everyone has to work for a big company to be respected." Michael smiled gently. "That's true. Respect comes from responsibility, no matter what path you choose." The room fell silent, and Ruth shifted uncomfortably. She could feel the distance widening between them. One Saturday morning, Michael organized a free workshop on small business management at the community hall. Over 200 people attended, from market traders to recent graduates. Emmanuel, curious, came to watch. He stood at the back, arms crossed, listening as Michael spoke about budgeting, customer service, and resilience. To Emmanuel's surprise, the crowd responded with genuine engagement. Questions flowed, laughter filled the air, and people took notes eagerly. Emmanuel left before the session ended, a knot tightening in his chest. A few days later, Emmanuel approached Michael with an unusual request. "I've been thinking about starting a logistics business," he said. "Maybe you could invest." Michael studied him for a moment. "I'm willing to help, but not with money. I can guide you, connect you to people, and help you make a plan. But the work must be yours." Emmanuel frowned. "You don't trust me." Michael shook his head. "I trust you to rise higher when you build it yourself." Emmanuel reluctantly agreed, and Michael began mentoring him. They met twice a week, going over business plans, identifying suppliers, and drafting marketing strategies. For the first time in years, their conversations had purpose. Emmanuel even began showing up on time, carrying a notebook, asking thoughtful questions. Ruth noticed the change and dared to hope her sons might finally find common ground. But old habits die hard. One evening, Emmanuel tried to cut corners, purchasing cheaper but unreliable motorbikes for his delivery team. Michael warned him, "If you start with poor quality, your customers will notice and leave." Emmanuel dismissed the advice. Within a month, 2 bikes broke down mid-delivery, costing him clients. When he came to Michael for help, Michael simply said, "Now you know why I insisted on quality. Learn from it." Emmanuel left, angry but unwilling to admit his mistake. Meanwhile, Michael's influence in Benton town continued to grow. He was invited to speak at regional conferences, his words inspiring other towns to replicate his internship model. A television station in the capital even aired an interview with him, introducing him as the leader redefining rural opportunity. Benton town beamed with pride, except for Emmanuel, who could not shake the feeling of being left in his brother's shadow. One afternoon, Ruth found Emmanuel sitting on the porch, staring into the distance. "You can't compete with your brother by trying to be him," she said gently. "You must be the best version of yourself." Emmanuel sighed. "But everyone only talks about Michael." Ruth placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's because he's earned it. And so can you, if you focus on building rather than comparing." Inspired, Emmanuel threw himself into his logistics business with new determination. He upgraded his bikes, trained his riders, and introduced a tracking system for customers. Slowly, his reputation began to improve. Clients appreciated his reliability, and word of mouth brought more orders. Michael, quietly observing, felt a quiet satisfaction. His brother was finally starting to stand on his own. By the time the year ended, Benton town had 2 success stories instead of 1. Michael's programs had placed over 50 young people into stable jobs, and Emmanuel's business had grown to handle deliveries across 3 towns. At the New Year's community celebration, Patrick stood between his sons, each holding a plaque of recognition from the mayor. For the first time, the applause in Benton town was not for one or the other. It was for both. And Michael, looking at his brother, knew that sometimes the greatest victory is not in winning alone, but in lifting someone else to stand beside you. The following month, a storm swept through the region, damaging roads and disrupting transportation. Emmanuel's logistics business was hit hard, with half his routes delayed and several deliveries cancelled. Frustrated but unwilling to give up, he turned to Michael for advice. Michael listened carefully before saying, "This is when you build trust, by keeping your word even when it's hard. Call every client, explain the delay, and offer a discount for the inconvenience." Emmanuel followed the suggestion, and to his surprise, not a single client left. In fact, many praised his honesty. Meanwhile, Michael faced his own challenge. Funding for his youth program was running low, and several sponsors pulled out due to economic uncertainty. Rather than panic, he saw it as an opportunity to adapt. He approached small businesses in Benton town and proposed a skills exchange. The program would provide interns in return for the businesses sponsoring part of the training costs. The idea worked, keeping the program alive without relying solely on outside donors. By early spring, Emmanuel had doubled his delivery staff, and Michael's internship program had expanded to neighboring towns. The 2 brothers began to appear together at community events, something that had not happened in years. While Emmanuel was still learning to curb his pride, he had developed a quiet respect for Michael's steady guidance. Benton town residents often remarked that the brothers were proof that even deep rivalry can turn into partnership. However, not everyone was happy with their success. A rival logistics company in a nearby town began spreading rumors that Emmanuel's team mishandled packages. The gossip reached Ruth, who rushed to her sons in worry. Michael stayed calm. "If it's false, let your work speak louder than their words," he advised Emmanuel. Emmanuel took the advice, improving quality checks and encouraging his riders to greet customers politely. Within weeks, the rumors faded, replaced by new praise for his service. That summer, Benton town organized its first-ever business and innovation fair. Emmanuel reserved a booth for his logistics company, displaying his fleet of branded bikes and offering discounts to new customers. Michael hosted a panel on youth empowerment in rural Africa, drawing an audience of students, business owners, and government officials. The fair ended with awards, and both brothers took home honors. Emmanuel for Emerging Business of the Year, and Michael for Community Impact Leader. After the event, Patrick gathered his sons under the neem tree in their family compound. "I was wrong," he said, his voice low but clear. "I pushed one of you too hard and the other too little. I see now that both of you carry greatness, in your own ways." Michael smiled. Emmanuel looked away, swallowing hard, but his eyes softened. For the first time, Patrick's words felt like more than ceremony. They felt like a real bridge. The months rolled on, and the bond between Michael and Emmanuel grew stronger. They began collaborating. Emmanuel's company handled deliveries for Michael's youth program, ensuring supplies reached trainees on time. In turn, Michael connected Emmanuel with new business opportunities in other towns. Together, they became known as the brothers who turned competition into cooperation. In late autumn, the mayor invited them both to a televised panel on leadership and resilience. Viewers from across the region tuned in as they shared their story, the rivalry, the lessons, the turning points. Emmanuel admitted openly, "I didn't always see my brother as an ally. But I learned that when you stand together, you can go further than you ever imagined." Michael added, "True strength is lifting others as you climb." Their story inspired countless messages from young people and entrepreneurs. Letters came in from students who wanted to join Michael's program, and business owners who wanted to learn from Emmanuel's persistence. Even Patrick's old friends commented on how much the family had changed. Ruth, sitting on the veranda one evening, whispered to Michael, "I didn't think peace like this was possible in our home." As the year drew to a close, the brothers hosted a joint celebration in Benton town's main square. Music filled the air, children danced, and tables overflowed with food. Emmanuel gave a toast, raising his glass toward Michael. "To my brother," he said, "who taught me that the best victories are shared." Michael returned the smile, lifting his own glass. "And to the people who remind us that family is worth fighting for, not against." The crowd erupted in applause, and for the first time, the square felt like a place where rivalry had truly been replaced by unity. The morning after the celebration, Michael sat by the riverbank, watching the sun rise over Benton town. Emmanuel joined him with 2 steaming cups of tea. They sat in silence for a while, letting the gentle rush of water fill the space between them. Finally Emmanuel said, "You know, I used to think winning meant being the one on top. Now I know it means standing side by side." Michael smiled. "And I used to think staying quiet kept the peace. But sometimes speaking up is what builds it." As the new year began, the brothers decided to launch a joint project, Benton Youth Logistics Academy. It combined Michael's training programs with Emmanuel's delivery expertise, teaching young people both technical skills and the business of logistics. Within months, the academy was full, attracting trainees from nearby towns. The success of the academy gave the brothers a shared purpose beyond family ties. Patrick, once a distant and critical figure, began volunteering at the academy, mentoring students in basic mechanics. Ruth cooked for the trainees every Friday, her kitchen filling with laughter and chatter. The home that had once been divided now buzzed with life and purpose. Neighbors noticed the transformation and often stopped by to see what the family was building. One evening, a reporter from Kitaro City visited the academy for an interview. "What made this possible?" she asked Michael and Emmanuel as the cameras rolled. Michael looked at his brother and then into the lens. "Forgiveness," he said simply. Emmanuel added, "and the decision to see each other as more than rivals." The segment aired across the region, drawing even more attention and support to their work. With the academy thriving, Emmanuel's logistics company expanded to 3 more towns, while Michael's youth programs gained sponsorship from international NGOs. The brothers traveled together to conferences, telling their story to inspire others. Their partnership became an example of how personal transformation can ripple outward, changing entire communities. But they never forgot the journey that brought them there. Every year on the anniversary of Emmanuel's wedding, they hosted a unity feast in Benton town, inviting not just family but also business competitors, neighbors, and former rivals. The event became a tradition, filled with food, music, and speeches about collaboration. At one unity feast, Patrick stood up to speak. His voice cracked with emotion as he said, "I once measured my sons by who could bring in more money or more recognition. I was wrong. True wealth is in the love you share and the lives you lift." The crowd cheered, and Ruth wiped tears from her eyes. Years later, when people in Benton town spoke of the brothers, they no longer remembered the quarrels or the wedding tension. They remembered the academy, the jobs created, and the opportunities given to young people who had once thought success was out of reach. Michael and Emmanuel had rewritten not just their family story, but the story of an entire community. Standing on the academy's balcony one evening, Michael looked over the courtyard where trainees were packing delivery boxes for Emmanuel's company. "It's strange," he said, "how the thing that once divided us became the thing that unites us." Emmanuel laughed. "That's because we stopped playing for ourselves and started playing for the team." And so, under the fading orange sky of Benton town, the brothers closed another day's work with a handshake that needed no words. The rivalry that once burned between them was now a steady fire that warmed everyone around it. Their story became a local legend, not of 2 men who fought for the top, but of 2 men who chose to climb together, proving that unity is the greatest victory of all. A few months later, the Benton Youth Logistics Academy hosted its largest graduation yet. Families filled the hall, the air buzzing with pride and anticipation. Emmanuel stood on stage in a crisp navy suit, calling each trainee by name, while Michael handed out certificates with a firm handshake and encouraging words. Cameras flashed as parents hugged their children, and the mayor of Benton town declared the academy a beacon of hope for the region. After the ceremony, a young woman approached the brothers with tears in her eyes. "Before I came here," she said, "I had no job, no direction. Now I'm running my own small delivery service in my village. You didn't just teach me a skill, you gave me a future." Michael's voice caught as he replied, "That's why we started this. To give others what we once struggled to find." That night the family gathered in Ruth's kitchen for a quiet dinner. The laughter was easy, the conversation warm. Patrick raised his glass. "To my sons," he said, "for proving that no matter how far apart we may seem, we can always find our way back to each other." Emmanuel clinked glasses with Michael, both smiling at the truth in their father's words. As the evening drew to a close, Michael stepped outside to watch the stars. Emmanuel joined him, standing shoulder to shoulder. "We've built something good," Emmanuel said softly. Michael nodded. "And it's only the beginning." In the distance, the academy lights glowed against the night, a reminder that their legacy was already taking root. Years later, the story of the Benton brothers was told in schools, markets, and village gatherings. Parents used it to teach their children about forgiveness, unity, and the strength found in working together. The rivalry that once threatened to break their family had become the foundation of something greater, a living testament that even the deepest wounds can heal, and that when hearts unite, the whole community rises.